I saw another film about a woman whose title was The Woman's Name, about a horrible event.
Your favorite kind of film.
My favorite kind of genre. This is Jackie. This is directed by Pablo Larraín, and it is the story of Jackie Kennedy, played by Natalie Portman, in the days after the assassination of JFK. And the film starts with this journalist played by Billy Crudup, who comes to interview her a week after the funeral. And the interview is intercut with flashbacks of the day in question, and also the events such as the swearing in of Lyndon B. Johnson, the funeral arrangements, as well as events prior to the assassination. And here is a clip of a bit of the interview where they discuss fame.
You'll have to share something personal eventually. People won't stop asking until you do.
And if I don't, they'll interpret my silence however they want. Her brow furrows. Her lips are drawn. She holds back her tears, but she can't hide her anger.
Most writers want to be famous.
You want to be famous?
No, I am fine as I am, thank you.
You should prepare yourself. This article will bring you a great deal of attention.
Oh, in that case, any advice for me?
Yes. Don't marry the president. Are you afraid I'm about to cry again?
No, I say you're more likely to scream.
Scream what?
My husband was a great man.
So I really enjoyed it. I think it's a really inventive take on what is biopic, which is probably the least inventive genre ever invented. Somehow everyone's stories become compacted into the same boring trajectory. And rather than taking the facts of someone's life and awkwardly putting into an A to B narrative, it's a much more impressionistic film. And key to this is the structure. And though the idea of a film based around an interview is nothing new, it sort of abandons this, or either it just obeys it very loosely. So it cuts back and forth from right after the assassination to a few days later, to the day before, to the moments after, to a TV tour she did at the White House a year before. And the result is not disorientating, but quite woozy. I don't know what the word would be. But I think what it does is effectively give you the sense of being in the center of this weird maelstrom. And as best as it can, it kind of puts you in her headspace, what it must have been like to be the center of attention in this century-defining event. And key to this very particular kind of strangeness is the score by Mika Levy, her second score after Under the Skin. And I lack the proper musical vocabulary to describe what is going on in the score, but it is just awesome. It's a similar sort of unconventional soundscapes that are really evocative. And I think she is replacing Johnny Greenwood as your go-to, I'm going to play a viola with a chair and create this awesome sound which will somehow embody everything you're trying to achieve in this scene musician. It's absolutely brilliant. The direction is also really excellent. It's pretty much 70% of close-ups of Natalie Portman's face. That is most of the movie. But this approach really works. It works partly because it's very cool to see all these iconic, infamous moments in history from her perspective. And like the footage of the assassination is probably one of the most played historical footage ever. But just by having it from her perspective puts a fresh spin on it. And it's cool to find the sort of human center in all these huge seismic events which could potentially overwhelm the picture. And there's also something a little bit forensic about the camera. It's almost like it's studying her face all the time to see the mask slip. And that kind of works because the story is about Jackie Kennedy, the icon and the real person. And I was looking at some reviews for this, and you know when you find a review which like perfectly nails it and you're like, damn, I wish I thought of that.
Absolutely.
Well, Danny Lee, who's the critic on the BBC Film 2017, made this good point that there's something inherently contradictory about the idea of Jackie Kennedy, because the image of her is like her in that sort of pink flannel suit on the day of the assassination, and then an image of her wearing the same suit covered in her husband's blood. It's like the epitome of composed political wife, and this probably the most vulnerable you've ever seen a political figure ever. And the film is full of these contradictions, and the sort of weird structure riffs on this. So you see her with this very composed, constantly editing this interview with this journalist, and you see her being very honest to her priest, and she's both sort of, you see her completely distraught, then numb, then dignified, then kind of falling apart, and then keeping it all together. And Natalie Portman, I think, is really excellent in this. I've read a few reviews that have been a bit down on her performance, but I think she's really well cast because there is something a little bit bristle about her as a performer. I think that's why she's good in Black Swan as well. I think she's good at playing people who perform in a way. And Jackie Kennedy is kind of like the proto First Lady. Like the idea of her entire dress sense is sort of what is now like the uniform for First Ladies. You know, she's a modern icon in that sense. And she does a really good job of, how do I put this? Like, I think it's always a cliche to say, like, there's the icon and there's the real woman. But I think the film is saying they're both the same person. It's not, you know, people are just different how they interact with different people. And it's not like, I am now fake Jackie Kennedy for the camera. Now I am real Jackie Kennedy crying. They're both all authentic as each other. And I think that's part of the cleverness of the structure. And also, it's only an hour and 40 minutes. Refreshingly tight script. And it all sort of comes together. And it's a very odd film. Like, I kind of watched it, I think maybe it's similar to Under the Skin. Maybe it's just the music. It kind of washes over you, this movie. And then afterwards, I was like, yeah. And then as I sort of left the cinema, all this stuff kind of unpacked in my head. I thought it was really clever how it kind of compacted all the information into a very accessible chunk and then sort of unfolded in the hours afterwards. And my mum really liked it. I saw this with my mum. This is the only film I've seen with my mum I wanted to see, and it was good.
Great.
Ooh, time for a break from all the film chat. Have a cup of tea, maybe make a quick snack, and telephone a friend so you know where she's at. Right, that's enough now. Back to film chat.